So, welcome to the next episode of the Strategiewerkstatt, our strategy workshop, which is our answer of a hitchhiker's guide through strategies. So we are collecting stories from people that have something to do with strategy. Today with me is Jacopo, and he has deep experience in UX. And I'm super curious about the stories that you bring, the experience that you bring. But before we start that, Jacopo, who are you? What are you doing? What keeps you awake at night?
Thanks, Marcus, and hi, everyone. Thanks for the invitation. My name is Jacopo Cargnel. I am currently Vice President for User Experience in an Austrian company dealing with a software for data integration. Yeah, I can say that I've been a designer for my entire professional life. Studied product design at the university, so I attended a design school in Milano, degree, then master degree. I started as a product designer, so I was designing objects, no real objects.
Physical stuff. Guys,
Exactly.
there's something other than software. There are things that you can touch. I love that you've been that. Okay.
Exactly, yes. But since then, I was very interested in the interaction aspect. So my specialization was in ergonomics, and so design of interfaces. At the beginning, it was like physical interfaces for products, as you said. But then I've seen the opportunity to transition to the digital world, also because it was for sure something that was starting to really become important. So an industry that was really growing a lot. So the transition to that was very smooth because I think the principles behind the design of physical interfaces are very similar to the ones behind the digital interface. So I could transition very easily, I think, from one world to the other. Yeah, and then since then, I've always worked in the field of digital for user experience related projects. Yes, and then when digital services started to transition to products, to real product or digital products, then I think I could apply even more what I've learned at the university. So the logic of evolving a product, the logic of strategizing a product, understanding what are the market signals, for example, and trying to translate this into a product strategy. So yeah, that's in brief my life so far.
Cool. From hardware to software, and interaction plays the key role. When you think back on what you've seen in the last, let's say 10, 15 years, what's for you the most iconic UX design that iconic or disruptive UX design that you've seen?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And maybe also gives the opportunity to talk a bit about my approach, because I've been always very much focused more on the service side of the interface. I believe we shouldn't try to surprise users with crazy effects. We call it delight, in the field. Or at least that's something that should come a little bit later. What for me very fundamental is that the product performs well in terms of service. So people are there to perform something, to get help for a job, to get a job done. And the interfaces of digital products or the digital products themselves should really try to help them achieving these goals. But I don't want to avoid your question, so I'll try still.
You will not be able to.
Yes. So I think in terms of iconic interfaces, well, I haven't seen things that surprised me so much in the past years. Also because I'm not very focused on these aspects. I think, for example, when I was involved in redesigning online banking websites, we were very much looking at Apple websites to present products. They make a lot of the use of very large and super high quality images with interesting parallax and scrolling effects. But again, that's really to delight users, no? So that's really to try to bring the product more like it's a real thing, like you can really touch it. But in terms of interaction, yes, I haven't seen so particular patterns, I would say. They try to surprise people, to impress people with a lot of effects. But yes, apart from that, I think I'm very much focused on the service part and also on how contents are usually organized in the platform, what we call information architecture. So the art to organize content, that's very important to me. But I can't tell you about outstanding interfaces.
So one interface that I think of now, especially when you talk about service and the product needs to perform, I'm thinking of the Google search. So it's, yes, there's some delight and the icon moves a bit, but in the end, it's just one line. You enter whatever you have on your mind, you click enter, and you get like a ranked result. I think this was maybe past Google. Now it's, if you use Google, it's more like you get like 2 pages of advertisement and then you start getting into the real results. So maybe there the service aspect is dropping out. But like the original idea, like having a slim thing, you just enter what you have on your mind, you press the key, and then you get the results in a nicely manner. That was for me a like really service-oriented user design that I really love to use, like where we had all the other search engines out there at the time.
Yeah, it is. Indeed, it is. It kind of introduced a different paradigm in the interaction. No, so it's more like a conversational thing. It's really more like having someone that can assist you, someone you can ask questions and that can reply, instead of you as a user looking for your contents and trying to find your way in the complex information architecture. And that's for sure very intuitive, no? Because you don't have to really search. You don't have even to know exactly what you're looking for. You can just ask your question, shoot your question, and the system can answer you. And that's also the logic that like modern chatbots have, not conversational UI, basically.
It's
That's very
conversations,
powerful, especially when you have a lot of input and you are looking for a very limited output on this. Yeah, I've written an article about that, especially. So when it makes sense to use conversational UI versus traditional UI, and the amount of inputs and outputs that this can generate.
We will make sure to link it in the episode afterwards.
I'll do it for sure.
Okay.
There are certain tasks where people really require to have a visual representation of things. Now, if you want to look for a trend, for example, of something, how it evolves over time, and there, like traditional visual interfaces really help you because it gives you the visual context of what you're looking at. It allows you to understand and get the answers to yourself. There are instead tasks where it comes really in handy to have an assistant that can really, based on your inputs, can really give you a quick answer.
Now, before we move into strategy, I want to touch on another point you said in our pre-discussion. You said UX is a really special skill. It's the skill of understanding customers at a level where you normally won't understand a customer. So what does it mean?
Yeah, well, let's start by saying that in my view, UX is much more than just designing the interface. It's, as I said, understanding the user, but also deeply understanding their jobs to be done, in a way, their tasks, even before and after that specific interface. We used to call them touch points, because you can imagine, like, as a person, as a user, you want to perform a task, which is not just what you do in one single page, but it's rather a much more complex journey that involves many pages like that one. So you need to understand really what's the final goal, and then you can design each single touch. And so if you consider UX like this, you can understand why I told you this. I think if you do UX properly, you need to really understand deeply what are the jobs that these users are trying to achieve. And if you do that, you can easily slip into the world of like customer experience. No, so you kind of take a bit of a higher perspective, and you try to understand what on the high level the thing that users are trying to really achieve with your product. And by doing that, you also understand implicitly what the proposition of the product or of the digital service you're designing, what's the kind of purpose, no? And by doing that, it's also easier to work and give input in the strategy. I don't know if I clarify this properly, but I think this one of the, if you intend it with this like extended meaning, so not just in terms of designing the UI, but rather understanding the task and designing user flows, so like larger flows involving multiple screens or even multiple touch points. If you understand that, then you will deeply understand what users' expectations on that and how you can really help them.
So I'm understanding this on 2 levels. The first level is the product org strategy level, to say UX gives me this deep understanding of what the customer wants and needs and what he goes through, what his outcomes is, which in the end will help me to define a better product, which will help me to define a better service. And with that understanding, it's easier for me to build like a product strategy and then even like strategically go into a certain direction because I do have this deep understanding. So this is the direct link between UX and strategy. Now I'm trying to transfer this, and I've not done that in my head before. So let's see if that works. Let's transfer this to this meta level of strategy execution. Because you said UX is about the interaction aspects. It's about the service itself, right? So when I think about strategy execution, it's an interaction of things that happen one after the other until at the end, a product falls out of this strategy line. So help me make this connect of how can I use the idea of UX for the execution of strategy in itself, not for building the product roadmap, but for how I really go through these different steps of a strategy design.
Yeah, that's a complex question for sure.
Yes.
Yes, I'm currently working a lot with the Jobs-to-be-Done methodology, which I think is really valuable. No, I mean, it takes also origin from lean, so it's not like new concepts, but it's very powerful. And there's one example in the book which kind of maybe we can use to clarify this. So at some point in the book, the author Ulrich says, people are not really buying a driller. People are buying the possibility to make holes in a wall. So the product is just something you need to use to solve something, to solve a problem, right? This, in my view, determines the product success or not success. So if the product is really aligned with the jobs that it needs to be done, then it will mean that this product will be successful. Otherwise, it's doomed to fail, in my view, no? But even if it's very aligned with the jobs to be done, that doesn't mean that the successful is guaranteed, because we deal with complex market situations at the moment. Many markets are also full, there's security in everything. So even if you provide a good service that aligns with the customer need, it doesn't mean that you perform well. But this is a precondition in my view.
Yeah.
And this should be, so if you imagine an organization should be somehow addressed to every level. So we should start from defining what the overall product success, why our customers are buying our product. Mm-hmm. And then we should try to unpack this concept into, for example, the many features that the product might have, or more horizontally, the many stages that customers might go through setup, for example, of the product. No, but it still goes through the deep understanding of this main job to be done, as well as all the collateral jobs to be done. And I think that's where UX can help. No? So to really, through tools like UX research, for example, no, or a collection of analytics, you can understand in a qual and quant way who your users are, customers, users in this case, what they want to achieve, how they are achieving that with, for example, competitors or products from other companies. So this will give you the deep understanding. And I think this should really inform most of the company, most of the organism, most of the teams in the company. So UX is not the only team that does this. I think there are multiple teams trying to collect these kind of insights. Now I'm thinking about program management, for example. But I think is probably the only one, at least in my experience, that is solely interested in solving user problems. And I'm not saying it should be the only team, right? But it brings such a powerful push towards that direction that obviously needs to be compensated with other components, with the feasibility aspect, with the viability aspect. But it gives so much push if it's well addressed also in the enterprise architecture that can really help every team to look at the customers and orient what they do towards this job to be solved. Yeah, not sure if I was fully answering your question.
I think you did, and I need to watch the recording to really 100% understand it. But I think you hit on this customer understanding that needs to be in on all levels, right? This remains the key to that success. What I'm also looking at is this idea of user interaction, like how does strategy interact with itself, right? So what are the stages between the interaction? That's another component that you also touch base on, to say we need to align this to this jobs to be done. And you brought this famous example of the drill. Yeah, there's a famous Swiss company selling drills. They don't sell drills, they sell holes. right? So, and even their business model is around the problem the customer solves, and it's not about the product with more RPM or more power. So I think this is a fundamental change that's then like also shifting back to the organization. Now, let's use this focus. So when you think about UX and the way you use this for your own, I know you're using OKRs and I know that you're working in this coordination layer as well. How is your organization shaping differently than maybe a classical organization because you bring this unique UX experience and UX view into it? How is your org different?
I think, as I was briefly mentioning before, the topic of enterprise architecture is very important. So provide UX with the right position in the organization is very key. Traditionally, I mean, in many companies, UX is still seen as some sort of subset of engineering or development, right? Because a common misleading is that UX designers only deal with the interface. So like people decide what they do, how they do, and then at the very end of the process, designers are coming and creating nice screens, no? And that's exactly what should not happen. But if you have UX embedded in a team like engineering or development, then it's very hard to provide input to the leadership about what we just discussed, not to understand really what are the customers' jobs to be done. So this is very important aspect, the enterprise architecture. That's why in the companies where usually I work as a UX leader, I ask for to have a kind of the right position in the hierarchy to be able to really address at the strategic level those inputs. So that's important. Second aspect, I think, so if you do strategic UX, so if you are able to research those insights and understand deeply the customers and their needs, and you are able to give this input to the leadership, then what usually I try to do, and I think it's also what I'm currently trying to do in my company, usually this translates into a set of inputs that from the leadership side kind of cascade to the teams. And obviously starts as high-level inputs, but then are given to you can imagine this like with layers. Now, when we discussed about this, you mentioned you see three layers, no? And so let's say it's 3 layers. So the company leadership, which is also aware of other things that are not just the job to be done of users, because I mean, we are talking about that, but that's not the only dimension, right? Yeah. There are market conditions, there are financial conditions, there is also, there is the technical evolution and new tools coming up. So there is the innovation side. So there are a lot of different inputs. No. So the leadership should be aware of this market signals as well as where the technology and where the world is going, but should also be aware of what the customers want to achieve with our products, not the famous holes. And then should give this input to the layer underneath. And the layer underneath should be able to take those inputs and translate into, for example, OKRs, which they can directly associate it with the features that they are, with the areas of the product they are managing. And then again, this intermediate layer should do the same with the layer below. So give again these inputs and let then the team underneath to execute on them. So I see this very much as input provided at the leadership level that then cascade into the other teams. I think like this UX can make a big difference. But again, the condition for that is that it's correctly positioned in the overall architecture of the company. That's unfortunately a precondition. Otherwise, true. It's gonna be ignored most of the times. Yeah. And I mean, in the industry, there's a long debate about the position of UX leaders in the executive level. Yeah, this started to happen recently. We can say it like 10, 15 years, maybe 20, but not more. But I mean, slowly it's happening. Yeah.
Wow. So we're coming to the end of our episode. Time flies also in UX. What I really learned is that UX is not about the user interface. It's about all the interactions going from one to the other. That's really a thing that I take with me. And yeah, I also myself have to rewatch that episode to really understand what we discussed before, to how to bring UX on this meta level of strategy. Jacopo, thanks for this great discussion. I learned a lot. I really enjoyed it a lot. My head is spinning right now because I see so many cool things that could be done. Yeah, I'm super grateful for having you on the show. Thanks, Jacopo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And yeah, available if you want to have further discussions about the topics for sure.
We will do so. Thank you. Thank you, Jacopo.